Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. Together, we are Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after a game against the Montreal Canadiens, a 4-2 win. The kind of game, now, there you go. That's the kind of game I think you can hang your hat on. I was just talking back and forth with North End Rick about this before we came on. I agree with his assessment on this. Full 60 effort, but beyond the full 60, I mean, that can mean a lot of different things. What it basically means is you stay active in the game the entire time. But one of the issues that we've talked about so often on this show with the Winnipeg Jets about, how against the Colorado Avalanche, they needed to kind of rally the troops, ask what kind of team they wanted to be going into the third period. Then they show up in their very next game after coming back against the best team in the league. And then they turn around and they are no-shows against the Ottawa Senators. And then there has to be, the coach getting upset in the dressing room after that period. It's just their game, the Jets game, so often, so many times this year, not even this year, in years past, it looks disinterested for certain points of the game. And then at other points of the game, they look absolutely dominant, which I think is maddening for Jets fans to see that happen. You can play a full 60, and I think this is kind of one of those games you would put in the full 60 territory for the Winnipeg Jets. But what I thought was their game looked the same in the first period as it did in the second period, as it did in the third period the entire time. That is a game that you can say we have an identity. So we talked so much about the Winnipeg Jets and not having an identity this year. They look to have an identity tonight. They look to be a hard-working team, a good passing team, a team that's able to find the seams, especially against that Montreal Canadiens team tonight, a team that can kind of roll the lines a little bit, a team that is, driven by guys like Josh Morrissey on the back end, who once again had a phenomenal game, a team that can rely on their goaltender in points of the game, when things aren't going so good. But you could start and look and expect what was going to happen from that team from shift to shift to shift. Whereas how many times have we talked on this show where people have come and talked to Kenny and I? We play hockey on Fridays, and they were heading out on the road for a trip, and someone asked me, what's going to happen in the game? And I said, I have no idea. You never know with this team what's going to happen. But this is what you want to see from a team. You want to see what you are expecting to see, because this team is trying to play a certain way, and they're going to come out and try and replicate that time after time after time. And a thought occurred to me when I was talking to North End Rick about this game. We've talked about it in the chat room here so much throughout the year, but all the times people talk about the Winnipeg Jets getting goalied. And it's like the Winnipeg Jets have faced this, this demon that no other team has had to face this year, because they keep getting goalied, and these goalies will come in and have a really good game against the Jets, but they don't have these same games against other teams. I contend the Jets have been getting goalied this season because what you saw from tonight in a player like Montembeault, if a goalie comes in hot and starts making the kind of saves that he was making, which we've seen at certain points throughout the season, if you're the Winnipeg Jets and you go to sleep for giant swaths of the game and you only show up every once in a while, and what you're used to doing is just showing up, scoring 2 or 3 goals, striking quick, and then disappearing again, and then winning that game 3-2 against inferior competition. Well, if you get a hot goaltender who pours water all over that tiny little hot streak that you have in the game, then you lose. And that's how you get goalied. You want to know how you beat a goalie that is goalying you? You do what the Winnipeg Jets did tonight, and you just keep coming. You don't stop. You don't go to sleep for large swaths of the game. You play with a consistent effort. You keep grinding the puck towards the net. That's what the Jets did tonight. And in the end, a goaltender that looked like he was going to steal that game ends up getting scored the game winner by Svechnikov, which is just a great fight. There's all kind of fight in that goal. Passes in his skates, and all he does is fight through that pass and the positioning of the defenseman just to get something on net. It beats the hot goaltender, and that's the game. Why? Because there was effort from the beginning right until the end. That is a game the Winnipeg Jets can hang their hat on. I've talked about this before, and let's not get too crazy. This was the Montreal Canadiens, the second worst team in the league. But we talked about the last stretch of hockey where the Jets played 6 straight games against teams below the playoff line and how they did so well there. And I said after that, I don't know that I have a lot of faith that this team is going to take that game and succeed against good teams, and they didn't. But And I don't know, I'm not saying that the Jets were about to go on a murderer's row of a road trip through Tampa and Florida and New York. I'm not saying that this means they're going to go run the table there, but I'm a lot more confident in the effort that was shown by this team, the style that was shown, the identity that was shown. I'm a lot more confident that that identity is going to play against those teams and at least give them a better chance than going and playing inferior teams, mailing it in for the majority of the game and outscoring your way out of problems. Bravo for the Winnipeg Jets tonight. I thought it was a great effort up and down the lineup. Let's see what Ken has to say about the whole thing. Time to bring him in. Best music in the business, ladies and gentlemen. Here comes Kenny. I don't know how I could never get sick of that song, but I don't. I just love it. Everyone's on it. Good stuff. Kenny, how are you doing tonight?
Tremendous. Yes, it is. It's beautiful. You got to love the voice, and you just want to belt it out at the end. I know you do. You want to get the karaoke going and just belt out the last line there.
I would sound like someone was torturing a raccoon in my backyard if I tried to pull off that voice. But boy, oh boy, it is good stuff. It is absolutely phenomenal. Kenny, I saw a complete game by the Winnipeg Jets. I saw a game to be proud of. I saw there's a ton of different things that we'll be able to get into.
Yep.
Morgan Barron had absolutely phenomenal game. Stastny continues to impress and kind of be like Jeff Hamilton that talked about last show, the guy that is kind of maybe center to this team, especially at times like this. It's understandable why a guy like that would be kept around at the trade deadline, because boy, would they be missing him right now the way that they're missing Andrew Copp. But what did you see tonight?
Yeah, I think you touched on a lot of important things, and I'll just pick up, before we get into the Morgan Barron story, which is a great one. One of the ways the Jets stuck with what you were saying they needed to do when Samuel Montembeault was playing out of his mind and making all these ridiculous saves. What did they start to do? They got to the net, Sean, but they got the goalie moving side to side, right? It doesn't matter if you're playing, minor hockey, Friday afternoon hockey, or if you're in the NHL. When the goalie is locked in, you got to do a couple of things. You either take his eyes away or you got to get him to go side to side. And as you touched on, the goal by Svechnikov, man, it's not just the shot, which is ridiculous. Incredible smart zone entry. Pierre-Luc Dubois drives the defenseman back, and as they drive back, he chips the puck over to Kyle Connor. Connor makes an excellent pass cross ice, and Svechnikov, I think that if you don't believe it in real time, go look at the replay. The way that he shoots the puck and gets anything on it at all, it's like Matrix-like, across the body shot, low to the glove side. And again, Sean, this is what we've been talking about all year with Svechnikov. We know he has an incredible shot and an incredible release, but he just hasn't been able to translate it into the games with any amount of regularity. So now for Svechnikov, we know it's been tough moving up and down the lineup. And yes, there have been a lot of games where he's been solid with Kyle Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois, but that's what he's got to do. He's got to finish those opportunities. And that's exactly what he did. And it just is a sign for a guy who has some incredibly good hands and a great shot. He's up to 7 goals, which again, found money. This is a guy the Jets had interest in for a long time, dating back to his draft year. 7 goals, he's probably not going to get to double digits, but it's still been a solid year for a guy who came over as an unrestricted free agent and initially signed an American Hockey League contract. But it's his first goal in 19 games, right? So, he needed this goal. His last goal was the emotional game for him where they played Montreal in Winnipeg. Mm-hmm. So good job by him, and it was an important day for that. Definitely, we're going to talk about Stastny a lot here today. Morgan Barron, fantastic. I thought Dylan Samberg, another really rock-solid game. I love what I'm seeing from him. Sean, I just see a guy with so much poise, right now. And even too, something, this is very simple. And again, fans may not notice these things, but Sean, you and I have seen and talked to Dylan Sandberg for years. He's a very quiet, unassuming kind of guy. I love the confidence with which he spoke last week before the game that he played. He just spoke with, like, here's a guy who wasn't feeling sorry about about his lot in life, getting hurt on the first day of training camp, getting hurt when he was playing well, having to go back and playing 12 more games. I love the way that he's playing. He's playing with swagger, Sean. I mean that in the best possible way. Not in a cocky way. This guy is playing right now like he belongs in the NHL. He's so composed. He's playing, bringing a physical element, but it's the things that he's doing with the puck, the things that he's identifying. I don't care if Dylan Sandberg gets 2 assists or 10 assists, but his ability to move the puck. We've talked about the zone exits. He's been great with that. He keeps the front of the net clean. And the next thing for me, Sean, I want to see Dylan Sandberg put on the penalty kill. We know that Logan Stanley has grown into a role with that. Dylan Sandberg has all the tools to be a high-end penalty killer. And that's something that I want to see in terms of the next step. But to me, and I've said this before, he plays with a little bit of that edge that Jacob Trouba had played with the Winnipeg Jets during his time here. And Trouba's got that edge back now this year with the New York Rangers. And I think it's such an important component. And I know there's lots of debate about who should move and who should go here and who should go where. I actually think that Brendan Dillon is doing a great job in terms of his movement to the right-hand side as well. I love the way that he's playing, and he'll continue to do so. But yeah, I mean, a lot of good things on the back end, but Dylan Sandberg continues to impress. And you touched on Morrissey, just, broken record here. Another just excellent game for Josh Morrissey. The play that he makes on the empty net goal, just exceptional to elude the oncoming forechecker and get the puck over. Just a fabulous play. And also, we'll get into it more too. Connor Hellebuyck, excellent job going back to back. I mean, the Jets are playing like they are still alive, which they are mathematically, and Connor Hellebuyck did his part.
Hey, before we get to I'm going to say something quick on that Josh Morrissey. The brilliance of that Josh Morrissey play is the way that the puck is dumped. It's done so in a way that Josh Morrissey is going to be the defenseman to go get that puck, and his momentum is supposed to carry him from the right side of the ice to the left side of the ice because he's coming from right to left. And then there is the defender, the first Montreal Canadiens player who's in on the forecheck is skating up, expecting to try and trap him against the boards and not let the puck out. But the beauty of what happens in that play, and you rarely see it happen, Josh Morrissey sees that the guy isn't coming full out guns blazing because he's trying to cut him off, force him to the wall, and keep him from firing the puck out. And so he delays just a slight bit. Morrissey uses that delay to stop his momentum and come back the other way around the net. You can tell the Montreal Canadiens were not at all expecting that. It looks like it's blown coverage on the Montreal Canadiens, and to a degree it is, because probably those guys just got to get in as fast as they possibly can and try and close something off. But I understand why the play is made, and I understand that you would not expect Josh Morrissey to do what he did. It's an extremely cerebral play. These are the tiny little bits of hockey that happen on the ice that I absolutely adore, that change everything on the ice, and just an absolutely brilliant play. Before we do go on, Ken, though, I was hoping you could give our friends at Cambrian their due and their shout out.
Yes, sir, Sean. I was so proud of the way I made the read yesterday that I accidentally added a word. So we've talked about mortgages and bank accounts, and we're members and proud members at Cambrian Credit Union. Just a reminder about the Learning for Life Award. Last episode when I spoke about the Learning for Life Award, I accidentally mentioned it was for student athletes. Those student athletes are definitely eligible, Sean, but this award is open to all students in Manitoba pursuing post-secondary education in the fall of 2022. This year, Cambrian Credit Union will be providing 5 awards valued at $2,500 each to students that exemplify leadership in one of 5 areas: arts and culture, community care, education, health and wellness, and a member award. Applications are open from April 4th to May 31st of 2022. And to get more information or to apply, visit cambrian.mb.ca.
I'll tell you this, Kenny, it's another reason that I, just love the synergy that happens with Cambrian here. Both my parents were teachers. They're retired. My father has passed. My mom is retired. My sister is a teacher. But when my dad passed, it was important for us to kind of try and live on the legacy that he had in Lac du Bonnet. And we had raised a lot of money after his death and give out a yearly scholarship in his name for students coming out of Lac du Bonnet Senior School. And this is just another one of these things. An investment in our future and in education by Cambrian is just so aligned with my values. I know it aligns with yours. Bravo to them. Great job by them. Let's get into the $1 million question right off the bat here. Actually, sorry. Let's go quickly to Morgan Barron first. And give me your take on him. I know that a lot of people see games like this, and every time I see a game like this, I think, okay, let's give it a little bit of a pause. This is a player who's had some NHL experience. He already had his first NHL goal. He's been in the NHL before, probably the best game that he's ever played in the NHL. But there's a tendency for fans to look at a game like Morgan Barron playing tonight, see that size, see the move that he made, see how well he plays with two skilled players like Stastny and Ehlers, but and people see that and think, okay, we've got something special in this player. What do you see, Ken? Is that the case, or is this just a young guy having a great night?
I see a lot of good things, and again, I would hesitate to immediately say, well, here's Andrew Kopp's replacement. You can play him in the top 6 every single night in the NHL. But what you have to appreciate, Sean, is the ability that he is playing with. And it's not, again, everyone thinks this is an easy job to just go out and play with Paul Stastny and Nikolai Ehlers. And even Barron himself talked about, yes, it is easy because of the communication that those two guys have with their line mates. So yes, they did make it easier on him. But there's the thing. Morgan Barron moves pretty well for a big guy. He goes to the hard areas. And what we saw today, that maybe we've only seen glimpses of so far, Sean, is a guy who's comfortable with the puck on his stick. This isn't just a guy who's a checker, right? During his career at Cornell, his production went up. I mean, he hasn't really had blow-you-away stats in the American Hockey League, but he's been a consistent scorer. What we saw today were a couple of really smart plays. I mean, he had a great setup on the Stastny goal, right? He has a great setup, and I loved the nonverbal communication with Nikolai Ehlers on the drop pass. He goes to the perfect spot. You know what, Sean? I mean, we've all been there. If you see that scenario where you think you're going to get the drop pass, it's so easy to go too low and then allow the defenseman to check you. What he allowed Ehlers to do was to drive the defenseman wide, and even though Barron himself thought it looked like Ehlers didn't know he was there, but that was by design, right? So Ehlers made it look like he didn't know the trailer was there, drove the defenseman back, and then went for the behind-the-back drop pass. And again, great finishing ability by Morgan Barron. This is a great shot off the post and in, a perfect play. I liked, and again, when a guy gets the offensive mojo going early, now you're feeling good throughout the game and you see a ton of confidence, Sean. So again, I think I've liked Morgan Barron in a lot of the games, even though there's been a small sample size and his ice time has been pretty limited. But I've liked a lot of what I've seen. And again, he's a guy that you could, this is a great opportunity for him. And he talked about it himself. I mean, this is put on a silver platter for him, getting to play in the top 6, right? This is a guy who doesn't get a ton of top 6 opportunities, certainly not at the NHL level yet. So he takes full advantage by not trying to recreate who he is as a player, not trying to just dangle, but to play with confidence and to do the things that he does well, to go to the blue paint and, just to have an impact on the game. So, good on Morgan Barron. I actually think he's much, more likely to be a full-time player with Adam Lowry and Mason Appleton on that reconfigured third line. But in the short-term basis, I really liked what I saw from him. Again, the Canadiens have some issues when it comes to defending. I mean, this is not this is not breaking news, but you have to give the guy credit. He was given an opportunity, and he took full advantage by doing the smart things that, earn trust in a coach's mind. But this is what we talked about so much, Sean. Whether it's Jansen Harkins, Yevgeny Svechnikov, Christian Vesalainen, who's mentioned there. Do the thing.
Read this point so that our podcast listeners can hear this. Sorry.
Barron already better than Vesalainen after 8 games compared to 50-something games. Well, here's the thing.
By Robert Starr says that.
Good stuff, Robert.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. He didn't try to overcomplicate things, so he did a really good job on it. Just smart. Taking full advantage of your opportunity, because you don't know when the next opportunity is going to come, right? That's the other part of it. I'm really impressed by him. And again, if you get the reason why he earned this chance, Sean, is because he had shown enough in small samples to have Dave Lowry have the confidence to say, oh, hey, you know what? I could put Zach Sanford there. I've done that before. But why don't I try to do this instead? And that's what he did. And he, like I said, it was just an impressive showing.
Well, I got to say this. What I thought about when I saw him doing what he was doing tonight is just the idea of how if you can get everybody involved, that you can be surprised by some stuff. There's strength and depth. And I'm going to detour from that point and talk about our boys at the Johnston Group, because they know everything when it comes to that. You won't find 2 businesses with the same challenges, but you will find 30,000 businesses with Chambers Plan employee benefits, because Johnston Group, they find the strength in numbers. It's what they do best. And the Chambers Plan, of course, is proudly administered by our friends at Johnston Group. Chambers Plan is Canada's #1 plan for employee benefits because it evolves with the way you work and live. The plan is run as a not-for-profit designed specifically to support small businesses, and its unique pooling strategy keeps rates stable so you won't have any surprises at your next renewal. Chambers Plan now comes with professional consulting on key financial, legal, and HR issues, and telemedicine services are included with every health option. See how Chambers Plan can benefit your business by visiting chamberplan.ca. And I've thought this since the beginning, Ken, when it comes to the Johnston Group. It's a brilliant idea. They take and they find, a whole bunch of people and bring them together and get strength in numbers. And that's how they're able to administer the phenomenal products that they do. And it should be the same with a hockey team. If you can take everyone and bring them in and see if you can put things together in a way that works, you should be able to succeed. And that's what I got thinking about with Morgan Barron here tonight. And that's what I got thinking about again with Evgeny Svechnikov. Morgan Barron is on a line with 2 really good players. And those 2 really good players give him an opportunity to show sides of his game that maybe he hasn't been able to show before at the NHL level, because he's surrounded by talent that opens up the ice for him. That ice gets opened up, and look what he does. He absolutely takes it was a Rem Pitlick that he deked out and left him on the ice to make that pass. Stastny is right in the spot he's supposed to be. But this is what happens when you give young, skilled guys who may not have had an opportunity to show their skill, an opportunity to show their skill. And it just comes back to me, Ken, this entire idea of the Jets went out and won a game tonight. And people are going to tell me in the chat room to pump the brakes, and they should tell me to pump the brakes. Once again, this is the Montreal Canadiens. You talked about it. They had a bad time defending tonight. They do not know how to shut down passing lanes. It's why the Winnipeg Jets scored 7 goals on them the last time they met up. They are atrocious at shutting down that cross-ice passing lane. It was the problem on their last goal, but forget that. You play the team that you have in front of you. But the idea that the Winnipeg Jets went out and won a game that they felt they needed to win tonight to stay in a playoff race that I think they're out of, but they still think they're in. And they take Morgan Barron on a line with Paul Stastny, who's been bumped. People were talking about how he plays at center, who is not one of this team's centers typically, and Nick Ehlers. And that's essentially is that your top line on tonight? They sure played like it. they do an absolutely great job with a guy that most Jets fans didn't know enough about to know whether he could do a good job or not. And then you take that second line that has had success with a guy like Evgeny Svechnikov, and they go out, and Svechnikov is the guy who pays off and scores the game winner, just to the point of what you're saying. We're going to get into the whole idea. And people were talking about how Sportsnet on the broadcast pointed out that the Jets are 5-0 without Wheeler and Scheifele. But if you can have those guys in the lineup and put them on a line, and then you've created a third score line, this is what we've been talking about all season, Ken. Yeah. This is the kind of stuff that can come out when you take two really good players and put them with another player who can complement them. This to me is how you build depth, and we've talked about this before. Whereas I think the Winnipeg Jets' idea of building rosters or a top four lines before this is literally, who's our best guy, Ken? Okay, let's put him at number one. Who's our second best guy? Let's put him on his wing. And our third best guy? Let's put him on the other wing. That's our first line. Now, let's take our second line. Who's our fourth best guy? Let's put him in the center. Who's our fifth best guy? Let's put him on the wing. Sixth best guy. There you go, and everything else is left over. Well, that's why we get the issues that we've had this season with the Jets, that they've got no depth scoring because you are cramming everybody into the top six. To me, what this game tonight, with Morgan Barron doing what he's doing and Svechnikov doing what we've seen him do before and what he's shown us he can do before, this is the way that you create depth. I don't know how many times the Jets are going to have to run into these situations where their fringe players show them how valuable they can be to the team given an opportunity. And if the Jets will finally take the cues from that and build a more balanced lineup, or if when those two play, and I guess this is a way of me breaching the subject of them being 5-0 without Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler. I know everyone wants to say it's because a lot of people are going to say they're cancers, they're problematic, they don't have enough effort, and with that out of the lineup, now this team succeeds. But maybe it's as simple as the fact that the Jets coaching staff is now forced to take and try and build depth through adding potential players like Barron and Svechnikov into spots to succeed. And those young guys are pouncing on their opportunity, and it's working. Maybe it's that. Ken, what do you see as being the issue that Scheifele and Wheeler seem to be, or the team seems to be better off record-wise anyways, without their captain and assistant captain in the lineup compared to when they're in a row?
First of all, bravo. That's someone said here. That's just a great trip to the buffet there. You didn't leave me any crab legs. All I see, the shrimp cocktail's out there, but all I see are the tails hanging over the cocktail sauce right now. All I see are the tails. That's it. There's no meat left on the bone right there.
The clarified butter is glistening on my chin.
Tremendous. First, a quick thing before I jump into that other subject. So here's the other thing. This is just I'm going to play the devil's advocate role that you occasionally have to play with me.
Love it.
The Jets tried this with Christian Vesalainen, but Vesalainen didn't produce in that role. So I would say that sometimes just the pieces fit a little bit better. And Barron did a great job of taking advantage of the opportunity. So in terms of before I dig deep into the Scheifele and Wheeler thing, first of all, it's important to remember that they were 4-0 previously at the start of the year when the Jets started the year 9-3-3, and they had a little bit more of a marshmallowy schedule. So I would say that's important to remember.
Like tonight.
I'm not dismissing, but again, today's game is against one of the three worst teams in the NHL by record. So what I would also say, Sean, the Jets had a similar amount of success when Dustin Byfuglien was not in the lineup for small sample sizes, and we all know how it turned out when Dustin Byfuglien went away. There's nobody out here saying, oh, remember when the Jets were 6-1 without Dustin Byfuglien, or when they were 18-4 without Byfuglien when he was hurt. I mean, you still miss quality players. I mean, what happened is that they had players that stepped up today. I mean, and that's what a team needs when there are players missing. And again, when teams do this all the time. I mean, the Tampa Bay Lightning played all of last year until the playoffs without Nikita Kucherov. They found a way to get better. But even though they were a great team in the regular season, there's no Lightning fan that said, oh, hey, look at how great the Lightning were without Nikita Kucherov. And I'm not comparing Wheeler and Scheifele to Kucherov. So I would say, can we learn a lot about the Jets during this last stretch if Wheeler and Scheifele are not in the lineup? Of course you can. But these are garbage time games. Yep. Yes, the Jets are playing hard, and credit to them for doing so. And yes, they have points in 3 consecutive games, 2 wins and an overtime loss. But let's see if they can sustain it. I mean, this is a team that hasn't won more than 4 games all year. So let's just be careful about the sample size in terms of making broad proclamations about what it means. Now, again, while we're on the subject, no news from the Jets, but Sean, I am confident in my, the lab coat is not on, but I'm comfortable in what I said yesterday. I still think it is a separated shoulder for Scheifele. I would say he remains doubtful to play again this season. Is there an outside chance, maybe if the Jets stayed in it late, that he could, suddenly reappear in the last, couple of games of the year? Maybe, but I don't expect to see Mark Scheifele again this regular season, unless he goes to the doctors when he gets home and it's not as severe, once the swelling goes down, all of those type of things. But I'm pretty comfortable that it's going to be a separated shoulder. I don't have confirmation, but that's my assessment. And in terms of Blake Wheeler, it's still a mystery in terms of when he may or may not be available. But I mean, what did you see without Wheeler and Scheifele in the lineup?
Well, I mean, I think what I saw was, okay, how do I want to start this? Where do I want to go with this? I think what I saw was a team that was, let's go back to the beginning. This was just a consistent effort all the way through. And I think that there's a tendency in the way that Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele play the game to slow down the game. And that's not always a bad thing, right? Like, if you can change pace and slow things down and make the other team wait, a lot of times what that does is it slows your opposition down. And then if you have guys on your team who jump into the holes that are created with speed, then you can catch the opposition flat-footed. And I think when those guys play their best, that's why listen, this is an explanation of exactly why you'll see so many of the goals that get scored by players that Mark Scheifele is passing to are guys who are streaking down the ice and Mark Scheifele hits them with that pass, right? Because Mark Scheifele plays the game in a way that if you're defending, you feel like you're just in the middle of, trying to keep a guy in his own zone, and then all of a sudden he's hitting someone who's streaking and going in. He set Ehlers up for a goal like that 2 games ago. Who was that against? Their last game here. Was it against LA or Colorado? I think it's the game before that. The first goal that they scored against the Wings. If you want a good example of what I'm talking about, that's that play. It's a pass from Mark Scheifele. He hits a streaking Nick Ehlers and he goes in. Now, you want to say it's Nick Ehlers' speed that makes that happen, and it is, but there's something to the way Mark Scheifele slows a game down that gets the defenders flat-footed and not ready for speed. And if guys capitalize on it properly, then you can get those little bit of an edge. That you can see that happen. It's the reason why Mark Scheifele just keeps putting up points over and over and over again. I think one of the issues with it, though, is when you're slowing the game down and you're not getting that edge and you're not scoring goals, then the game just gets really slow and it gets slowed down and plodding. And then we get what we see, Ken, when the Jets don't get, only get 4 shots in a period because they're waiting. They're slowing it down and they're waiting for that opportunity to have. They're not pushing the puck up ice. So what I saw tonight, I do think the difference between this team, and I feel like I saw the same thing at the beginning of the year when they were winning, the difference between this team with those 2 in the lineup as opposed to without it is they like to play a game. I've talked about it before. They're snake charmers. Slow things down, hypnotize your opponents, and then quick strike. That's how they score. But if the opponent knows what's happening and can shut it down, then there's no quick strike. There's just a lot of really slow game like this that never really goes anywhere. With them not in the lineup, I felt tonight that it was just a Jets team trying to get offense the way the vast majority of hockey players get offense, and that's just pushing the puck down ice, trying to get down, trying to get an extra man in, jump up into the play. First guy pushes the defender back. The guy with the puck has to has to have his guy think you're either going to go to the net, he's got to defend a passing lane, and then the last guy tucks in behind. That's exactly how they score the goal with Svechnikov, right? These are players who are moving around and trying to grind the puck down to the net. So what I see that I think is translating to this, I don't think it's nothing. I'm not saying for a second, and I know Julie Sue is really upset about this topic, and doesn't like the idea that, and to your point, I think you make a really good point. I remember that. I remember seeing that the team was succeeding without Dustin Byfuglien and thinking about that. But to say that a team can't use Scheifele and Wheeler at their best, and that those two at their best don't make a team better, is ludicrous. It's a ludicrous statement, but that does not mean that the effect that they're having on the team, or the effect of them not being there and how the team has to respond, hasn't led to a good brand of hockey that is creating success for them. And I think that's what we saw here tonight.
Yeah, I mean, all fair points, but I mean, also too, I mean, Mark played his best game of the year the other night when he was skating, right? I mean, got to the net. You know, the game against Colorado was probably Mark's best game he's played in years. So they have it in them. I mean, I would also counter Sean and say that Wheeler has been playing with a lot of speed, and by moving to the line with Dubois, he elevated his game and wasn't playing that type of game. So again, I think it was also important to remember that the Jets' second best stretch of the season was 10-4-1 this year, Sean. And both Mark and Blake were in the lineup for all 15 of those games. So they have been a bit of a mystery. There are issues that the Jets need to take care of when it comes to their defensive play. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting debate. But again, I would always caution against a 5-game sample size, especially when 4 of those games were played in October when 2 players had COVID. And a lot of the league is dealing with COVID at the time as well. So,
and the point you made, it was a marshmallow schedule then, and the game that they won tonight was against a bit of a marshmallow team as it is right now.
And again, they're playing better under Marty St. Louis, but let's get real. I mean, they have some improvement to do.
I think they've won 2 of their last 8 games. I mean, it's not
before that time. Before that time, they were really rolling. But again, when a team needs, Sean, it's a shadow of the team that went to the Stanley Cup final last year, right? A shadow.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Especially when it comes to the defense. Look at how tough it was for the Jets to get to the blue paint last year and get anything in transition or get to the front of the net. Joel Edmondson is the only player. I mean, Romanov has some potential, but they were not making it difficult for the Jets. I mean, Nikolai Ehlers on that one shift made about 3 circles in the zone and never got touched. I think he left 3 drop passes on that one stretch. So let's pumping the brakes is too much, but we know what's happening, Sean.
Pumping the brakes is fair. This is not a good team. After
Wednesday, the Jets will play Florida and Tampa. Yeah. And if we can have a much better assessment of where the Jets are at, or if they're anywhere, after the weekend comes. And they play 2 of the best teams in the NHL. And, if you happen to survive that back-to-back, you've got the New York Rangers and Carolina Hurricanes, who also view themselves as Stanley Cup contenders. So, full marks for how they played today at times. Much better effort. There was no paint peeling required. Nobody needed a pep talk. Nobody needed to raise their voice. But let's just take it for what it is. It was a tidy effort against a team that can't wait for the regular season to be over.
Exactly. Hey, you know what? There was a time a little while ago we did a long form broadcast that the first one that we were supposed to do with Sheldon Kennedy, and there was a late minute cancellation. I forgot to cancel the show, and there were people who showed up in the chat room waiting for the show. I felt like I lied to our audience. I felt like I've deceived them. So I've tried to make sure that I've never done that again. And true to my word, we said we were going to have Jeff Hamilton join us on the show again today, and that means we get to hear his awesome entry music. So let's bring Hammer in. It's time to bring down the hammer, everybody.
Bring down the hammer! Dropping 2 bombs, dodging shot grenades! Move over, can someone else is on something? Gonna make Renny shout, and the show will overtime! Bring down the hammer!
Hammy, how are you doing, my friend?
Oh man, how can I complain? I'm in Montreal, in the La Belle Province. I'm doing great. Doing good.
I love the record spin of the picture. That's actually my favorite part. I mean, I love the riff itself, but when your picture does the spin, it's like you're on the turntable right there. It's just getting you ready to be wound right up.
I was trying to do a live one there, see if I could flip around, but just wanted to move out the light there. Yeah.
The one thing is, Hammy, you never have an excuse to not bring it on this show, because with entry music like that, if you can't get up for your spot on the show after entry music like that, you don't deserve that entry music. So,
and that's not even taking into account your bizarre takes I get to jump all over. This is the perfect setup. That just gets me going. If anything, I listen to you, and then that actually eases me a little bit, and then I get on and we chat.
I'm trying to set you up, and here you are dropping the ball already. Come on, let's get out of here. What do you think of the game?
Talk today, so I've already let out a little bit today. So
yeah, you certainly did. There was some good venting there. There was some good.
Imagine with that.
Some good venting there. I listened in the afternoon.
You know what? I think it's funny. I have a little bit of a less harsher take than Kenny does. I don't mind it. I mean, this is a team that obviously isn't great, but the Jets were missing some of their big guns, back to back on the road. I mean. Can somebody pronounce the name for me of that goalie? Is it Montembeault?
Montembeault, yeah.
Nailed it. So, I thought he played stellar tonight. I thought Dave Lowry was really, astute in his comment that, we didn't necessarily generate a ton, particularly in that first period, but they didn't give up a lot, so I thought that was, a step in the right direction. I thought that the Jets played, given that they had played 24 hours earlier, again, two lowly teams, but the Jets are kind of a lowly team. So the reality is, they get the 2 points. We can be critical for sure, and we will be, and we have been, but, they got the job done. There was 4 points available. They won both games. But to your point, Kenny, I think, the test is going to be on the weekend, against two much better teams. And, I don't think the Jets can get away with some of the stuff they got away with over the last couple games. But, listen to Josh Morrissey tonight. I mean, it's about playing the right way. I thought it was interesting that he made the reference that Paul Stastny moved to center. Didn't seem to want to elaborate on that, but, there was a responsible game from them. I thought Morgan Barron played great. He's a good kid, good guy, for him to have a big night. Playing 6 games straight for the Winnipeg Jets. That's the longest stretch of NHL games he's played in his career. I think his career is only 34 games. So for him to have that, he broke the ankles of, what's his name, Rem Pitlick, and then, fed Stastny that in the slot, and before that took the drop pass from Nick Ehlers and made it nice and made it happen. So, I mean, what a great night for him and his family, his brother, what's his name? Justin Barron. Sorry. Yeah. a Canadiens prospect wasn't in the lineup. Pretty funny if you caught Morgan's comments. Yeah. There was another opportunity earlier in the year where his brother got called up against the Rangers, but he had got sent down a couple days earlier. So just bad timing, but his brother and his parents were in attendance tonight. So that's a feel good, I guess. But Connor Hellebuyck wasn't busy, but was good. It's hilarious, not hilarious, but Paul Stastny gets a 20 goal season for the first time since 2013-14 when he played for the Colorado Avalanche. So it's wild that he hasn't, he hits a new mark. So anyways, I'm adding a little bit of good here before we twist this thing around.
Oh, and I wasn't saying that it wasn't a good effort. It was a very good effort by the Jets. I want to see it against an elite team now. I mean, yes, they played very solid at times against the Avalanche, who were missing players. Do it back-to-back against Florida and Tampa, then I'll be really impressed. One quick one before we dive a little bit more. For the folks who always are on social saying this is why the Jets should have Paul Stastny as the third-line center and Adam Lowry as the fourth, no, this is why Paul Stastny should be center, but not on the third or fourth line. Adam Lowry's not a fourth line player. He's a third line player. He had tons of scoring chances again tonight, but you can move. The one thing too, if Mark Scheifele is still around next year and the Jets bring Scheifele back, they should be considering moving him to right wing and having Stastny play center. This is very simple to me. I get it. It's the premier position, and Mark wouldn't want to do it. But if you're not interested in checking in the defensive zone down low, let the guy who can do the job, move to the wing, score goals, pile up points, cover the point man on occasion, and just be a solid player and don't end up on the bad side of the highlight reel with so much regularity. But anyways, great job by Stastny.
You're on the eve of a wake up, and did we go all last night without a wake up? Because I feel like that warrants a wake up. I'm never going to give you a wake up, but
it happens more often than you think. But I like the idea of getting a wake up in with this, because let's be honest with ourselves. There is no way Paul Stastny hasn't made it clear he would want to try that situation out. Agree with me? I mean, he sits there and he talks.
Well, he did it publicly, so I hope he has done it privately. He basically came out and said, "I'm bored playing on the wing."
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. He came out and basically talked. Now, I don't think he specifically said it about playing with those players, but we've talked about this in the past quite a bit in the press box. There's a simple solution, especially when you had Stastny, Scheifele, and Wheeler playing together, is you've got the one guy who can handle off both the defensive responsibilities and the offensive responsibilities. The solution is right there. It's on the very line that you're playing. Why have we not gone down that road?
Hey, it's a simple case of what he said, what he meant. He said he's bored and he wants to play center. What he meant is, I'm tired of playing center and the defensive responsibilities. Move me there. And as to why, I don't know. I mean, you know what?
I know.
This would be pure speculation, but I think Mark Scheifele would view that as another wrench in his season. It's a demotion moving from center to wing, in my opinion, in his mind, I imagine, right? I mean, it was only a few years ago, right, that Mike Babcock called him one of the best centers in the league and yada, yada. Now, where he should be hitting his prime, he's now being moved to the center where it's known as an easier position. And I'm sure Ken is about to say this, but I'll sweep in and steal it with him while I'm at the buffet. Centermen get paid more. Guys who have centerman responsibilities sign bigger deals. And so if he's going to evolve into a winger at a time where he's going to, is in a position to re-up or to sign a new contract in a couple of years, you're not going to want to be a winger. You're going to want to be Mark Scheifele, top-line centerman of a team.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
not saying it's better for the team. I'm just saying.
It's better for Mark, and Mark's always been so the only time that Mark has played on the wing is when he played with McDavid or Matthews at the World Cup, which he embraced the job and played great at it. I would also say Mark should look at Edmonton. Connor and Leon play together regularly. That means one of them is on the wing. And what do those guys do when they play together? They rack up points like nobody's business. So who cares who's at center? I agree with you, Jeff. I think he would view it as a demotion, but he shouldn't view it as a demotion. It makes his life easier, and it probably makes the team better. So here's the other part. The Atlanta Thrashers moved Brian Little to the wing. Brian Little is one of the most conscientious players the organization has ever seen. Right? So, and that year, Brian Little had 31 goals. So, this seems obvious to me. But again, you have to either have Perfetti at center or you have to have Paul Stastny back in the lineup. But, I mean, if the Jets are going to keep Mark Scheifele and not move him in the offseason, I think that the conversation with whoever is the head coach has to be had. Mark should move to the wing for the benefit of himself and for the hockey team. It's win-win. And to be honest, Jeff, to your point, I think Mark would produce more if he moved to the wing.
Absolutely.
Because the responsibilities are so much less. You talked about Paul Stastny being a 2020 guy. Part of the reason might be that is because he's playing on the wing.
Matthew Perreault, he saw his numbers climb when he moved from the center to the wing. We see that a lot of guys, but more often than not, Kenny, with all those other examples, it's because you're older, you're slower. It benefits you. Mark Scheifele isn't exactly in that position.
1 second here. I just got to take care of some business. Troy Stevens has been on me twice about this, and he's right. We've gone too long without the headband. We got a three-headed monster going on here. Let's turn this into a three-headed monster show of Kenny and Renny with Sean's headband. I wanted to respond to this here, you guys, and Jeff, I think what you bring up, I think it's crazy, and I don't think it's crazy in the way that it sounds like I'm attacking you. The idea, I think it's correct that Mark Scheifele would see it as a demotion if that move was made, but at this stage, it is crazy to think that a coach, whether it be Dave Lowry or whether it be Paul Maurice before him, it's crazy to think that given what we've seen out of Mark Scheifele defensively this year, that a coach would care, that a coach would give a rat's ass how that player saw that, whether he saw it as a demotion or not. This is a fix. It's your job as a coach to fix a situation. If you are not getting what you need from Mark Scheifele, we've talked about this in the chat room, talks about it all the time. How many people out there have wanted at one point or another this season to see Mark Scheifele benched this year, to see, never mind Mark Scheifele benched, but spend some time in the press box, because you think that is one of the hammers that your coach holds to try and get the effort that you expect and require from your player. Well, if you can't do that, and I do realize that doing something like that, that's the kind of thing that can create maybe a situation where you break the relationship between a player and your team. And so I get that. That's when the rumors start. That's when Elliot Friedman starts doing 32 Thoughts and talking about, Mark Scheifele spent the last game in the press box, and now the LA Kings are sniffing around or whatever. That's what happens in that situation. But if it's a demotion and your demotion is that you are still on the top line, you just got moved over to the wing for a centerman who, let's be honest, guys, when the game is on the line at the very end of the game, who's the guy who takes the draw every single time? It's Paul Stastny. If they need to hold a lead, or if they need to most definitely win a draw, it's Paul Stastny who goes and takes it. They've already had variations of putting him into center because of the importance that he holds there. It's not a huge stretch to have him just move full time there and say, I've got this for a while. So to me, what I think is crazy about it, I think you're right, Jeff. I think it would be felt that way. Of course it would be felt that way. Someone is saying to your first line center, you're not getting the job done defensively. We need to move you out of that spot there. So of course it's a demotion. But the fact that we would talk for a second and think that Dave Lowry would realize this, or that Paul Maurice would realize this, and they wouldn't have made this move, is complete and total insanity.
Yeah, no, and I wasn't making it. I agree with you. That's crazy. But I completely agree with you. And I wonder if that would have even been considered under Paul Maurice.
It had to be.
That's what I'm saying.
How could it not?
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. Well, my point was that if that was discussed, Dave Lowry was in the locker room, in that part of that staff, in those conversations. Again, this isn't playing devil's advocate. This isn't arguing against what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because I'm not saying that they shouldn't. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I believe they should have moved him there. They should have moved him there. They should have done whatever job they needed to do to convince him that this was a good idea. And if he couldn't be convinced, so what? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, okay, we tried to sell this to you, but now we're not selling it to you anymore. This is the reality. This is what you need to do. Because, you're right. I mean, I don't know, Paul Stastny takes draws on his backhand, right? He'll take them every time it's on his backhand. So, Mark does his backhand. So they're already splitting those duties. I just think, and again, I'm just saying what I think Mark is thinking, not what I, suggest should happen, or that the Jets shouldn't be doing this. What I'm suggesting is that I'm wondering what the issue, what the roadblock is to actually do what I think we all agree is the right move for this organization.
Yeah, I mean, for me, part of the reason why this couldn't have been done earlier, Sean, and I know that you mean more this year, but so the 2 years when Stastny went to Vegas, if the Jets re-signed Paul Stastny after the run to the conference final, I think that's when you could have considered that kind of a move. Now Mark is entrenched as a centerman, but I mean, Mark used to train with Steven Stamkos. Stamkos came into the league as a center, but he moved to the wing because they got guys like Braden Point rolling into town, right? So I think that there's tons of evidence of guys and very strong all-star level players who have moved from center to wing. And again, we even saw it too when Kopp was playing with Scheifele. Kopp was taking a lot of the draws, taking some of the defensive responsibilities. I think it would be something that would be definitely worth investigating, again, if that's the way they decide to go.
But I mean, let's think about this for a second. If we're talking about Mark Scheifele, it feels like people are pointing the finger at Mark Scheifele for this. This isn't Mark Scheifele's fault if this is the situation here. Like, you would expect a player to be upset if he gets moved out of that spot. You used Perreault as an example. When Perreault first got moved out of center, he was acquired as a center from Anaheim, not from Anaheim, but signed as an unrestricted free agent coming from Anaheim, played as a center there, said he played his entire career as a center, wanted to be a center openly because he was a truth serum guy, openly told us he wasn't happy to be getting moved to the wing, and then ended up liking it. He did back in that day. He openly said that he did not.
Back to me. I think he liked it originally and wanted to go back to center after.
No, I think he wanted to stay on the wing, but it was because he hurt his back on draws. It was more that he was initially against it, but then he was, it allowed him to play a more heavy game because he wasn't hurt all the time.
Exactly. So what he found was, but when he was moved away from center, he wasn't happy about it. That, as a coach, that's just what you have to deal with, right? Like, every guy wants more ice time. Every guy wants to play in a certain spot. Every guy wants to play with a certain line mate or defensive pairing. That's how it goes. This is the built-in thing that you have to deal with as a coach. But so this isn't on Mark Scheifele. If Mark Scheifele has wanted to stay and maintain his role as the number one center on the Winnipeg Jets, that's what he should be doing. That's what every guy who wants to be a number one center should be doing. And they should be upset if they're getting taken out of there, because you have to have a belief that you're the best if you're going to be in that. So it's not on Mark Scheifele to say, yeah, I'm going to step out of here. Is it on Mark Scheifele to put in more effort? Yeah. But if you're not getting that, it's your job as a coach to do something about it. So if this is a move that seems obvious, and again, I couch this by saying it may seem obvious to the three of us. That doesn't mean diddly. But if it seems like it's obvious to Paul Stastny, who's basically hinted at it in the media, it's insanity that this hasn't been explored. And if the reason it hasn't been explored is because Mark Scheifele wouldn't be happy about it, well, too bad. That's your job, to manage personalities as a coach. And if this has been explored down the stretch, or looked at down the stretch, and they haven't gone in that direction because they're worried about the emotions that's going to elicit from a certain player or multiple players, then I just say that's coaching not doing their job, needing to put guys where they need to go for this team to succeed. Want to move on, guys? Or do you have anything else to say about it?
No, I've exhausted my 55 take here.
Okay, let's get into, were you surprised by Hellebuyck? Hammy, I read your tweet. I know that we didn't know till the last minute. Were you surprised they went with Hellebuyck back-to-back?
Not at all. Not at all. Like, I mean, I was almost expecting it when now I'm not suggesting that, it turned out to be the right move. Of course, they won the game, but I knew they'd take that mentality. And I don't think it's a lack of trust in Eric Comrie. I think it's an abundance of trust in Connor Hellebuyck. So, and I know people are upset saying, what does Eric Comrie need to do? They know what they have in Eric Comrie. Eric Comrie has shown this season that he is a capable number two. And the Winnipeg Jets, as Dave Lowry said after the game, and again, I'm not sitting here being like, I'm not anti-Eric Comrie. I think Comrie's been terrific. But so is Connor Hellebuyck when they've needed him. This is, his crease. They have conversations after a game. It was I don't even know if they fly to Montreal. They probably do, but it's an up and down. They got to bed really early. That there wasn't. Hellebuyck was busy last night, so there was that element of the game too. But I just I think that they went with their number one, and I'm not overly surprised. And I thought the explanation by Dave Lowry after the game, saying they're in desperation mode and yada yada yada. They want their number one in. They want Connor Hellebuyck in. Don't make those decisions, so don't come at me. But I wasn't at all surprised. And when Dave Lowry, when I asked him yesterday what the plan was, and he said they have one and they're not going to release it, that was my first indicator that they were going to go back to 37, assuming he was ready and capable of going. And we always know he is.
Sure, and it actually kind of reminds me of Sean, we talked about this after the Buffalo-Toronto set. It kind of still surprises me that they didn't go back-to-back then. Or else gone the reverse order, which also leads me to believe, guys, so we played back-to-back now. So you have a back-to-back against Florida and Tampa. Do you go Comrie on Wednesday, or do you ride Hellebuyck through and see what happens on the weekend? And maybe Comrie gets Saturday against Tampa, but I mean, man, that's a pretty big ask also. But I mean, Comrie went out and played great against St. Louis, so I don't think they'd be afraid to use him. I don't think we'll see 2 back-to-backs for Hellebuck in the same week, which leads me to believe, or leads me to be curious about what they may do on Wednesday against Seattle. I mean, I know it's not a gimme, but much like we just talked about now, Jeff, short travel between Tampa and Fort Lauderdale or Sunrise, same as Ottawa, Montreal. So do you give Comrie the middle game and then go back-to-back with Hellebuck on the weekend in the 2 games against the league superpowers?
Mm-hmm. And great question. I mean, we all know that Connor Hellebuck, I'm not going to say he can play 82 games, but he would say he could play close. He wants to play every game. He feels like he's capable of. So I mean, the answer to this question has been the same, I'd argue, for the entire tenure that Connor Hellebuck has been the number 1 goalie. If he's ready to go and it's a must-win game, they'll do it. They're in a situation where Dave Lowry in his comments said if it was the playoffs and it was back-to-back games, he would play. So if the mentality is this is playoffs right now, then they're going to play Connor Hellebuck the rest of the way. It doesn't matter if it's a back-to-back. If he finishes up against Florida and he's had a rough game and it's a tough one for him, yeah, maybe it's Eric Comrie out of necessity. But until Connor Hellebuck says, I can't play, I don't think the Jets are going to look in a different direction other than 37. You don't have to like it. I'm just saying that would be my prediction for the remainder of the season. If the mentality is desperation, must win, because they need help from other teams too. So there are going to be games down the stretch here, inevitably, when the Jets are mathematically eliminated, that's going to open up opportunities for Eric Comrie. That opportunity for Eric Comrie, judging by today, judging by the fact it was a back-to-back, judging by the fact it was 2 bad teams in the National Hockey League, tells me that there is no way they're looking to Eric Comrie until they're mathematically eliminated. And for those who want to see more of Eric Comrie, I have good news for you. The Jets will eventually be mathematically eliminated, and Eric Comrie will get his opportunities. I just don't see it until then.
I'm sorry, Sean, one quick one about Comrie. I know some folks up in arms on the old socials about Eric Comrie probably is going to become a Group 6 UFA because it's unlikely. I think he would need to play in 8 of the last 8 games, and that we know that's not going to happen. But let's also not forget Eric Comrie's Magical Mystery Tour. If Eric Comrie wants a backup job, he knows the Jets believe in him. Is it possible someone else gives him a job? Of course. But it's a small sample size this year, and he knows where he stands being the backup behind Connor Hellebuck. So I don't see him becoming a UFA as an impediment to Eric Comrie being back with the Jets. You know, it would have been a lot easier if he was an RFA, yes, but I don't think that he's looking for greener grass elsewhere. He's had a nibble on the grass, and it wasn't greener elsewhere, which led him back to Winnipeg.
All right, devil's advocate time for this whole thing here. We know the Jets aren't making the playoffs, okay? I understand the Jets trying to play the string out on this and conduct themselves as though that's the case. So it's like you give the crease to Helly until he loses. But we've trotted out this stat before. Connor Hellebuck has played more games in the NHL than any other goaltender since way back in 2017. The guy's been an absolute workhorse, but I don't know. And I know Dave Lowry talked about this early in the year. They say they've got metrics. They're able to do testing and stuff like that to see whether a guy gets tired. I don't buy that a goalie does not get tired out and break down slowly over years and years and years when they don't get overplayed. So I take a look at this situation here and I say, one, Eric Comrie has given you every reason to believe that you'll have a good chance of winning that game if you put him in. He's proven it time and time again this season, so there's no reason not to go to him in an important game. But two, to be riding Connor Hellebuck down the stretch in a season, you rode him the entire season after stacked up seasons of riding him over and over and over again, I think has the potential to affect how he plays next year. And I don't know that anyone could argue against that. When we take a look at goalies and numbers, and when you see how often goaltenders are played and how it affects them over the years, to me, you are riding a player down the stretch that you don't need to, because the guy that you hired to be there for him, to keep him from tiring out, has done his job more so far. this season. So to me, stacking and piling up more and more and more games on Connor Hellebuyck down the stretch here in a season that you're going to miss the playoffs and you're going to need him to turn around and be at his best next season. When you're going to ride him all over again next season, it doesn't make any sense to me. This is a game that they should have had Eric Comrie in the net. They're playing the second worst team in the league. Yeah, they won. That's fine. I just think that they are fighting the battles in my mind, with the potential of losing the war if you take a goaltender like Connor Hellebuyck and don't put him in a situation to be at his best next season or the season after that for the 2 more seasons that you have him. Guys, do you want to touch on that or should we move on?
I'll go quickly. I disagree, Sean. I mean, if the Jets miss the playoffs, as you say they will, and you are most likely correct, and I think we all agree on that, Connor's going to have a long off season to get himself rested. I would say that the truncated schedule the year before, yes, he was busy, but the season, it's just been crazy for the last 3 years. So was there a physical and emotional toll? Absolutely. I mean, Connor went through COVID in terms of his training this year. He's about to have his longest off season that he's had since 2016, 17, somewhere in there. So I think there's lots of time for him to get the body revved up for next September or October when the games start. I mean, is there some risk of him breaking down physically? Yes, but I don't think that Connor Hellebuyck would subject himself to that. But at the same time, he wants to be in the lineup. This is very simple, Sean. He wants to be in the line. He wants to be in the net until they're out. I mean, that's the kind of competitor he is, and you applaud him for that. And as long as he's not doing himself any harm, which he isn't doing physically, well, we can argue about that. I mean, we don't have to argue, but we can disagree. That's fine.
We can argue.
Yeah.
And the other part too, we've talked about this all year long. Comrie would have had a stretch where he played earlier, but he had COVID. I mean, I'm not saying he would have played 5 more games, but then Comrie also had a stretch when Hellebuyck was sick and had the baby, where he played, 3 in a row. So it's just been a weird year on a lot of levels. And again, I still think that Comrie is going to get himself some games. But Sean, to your point, and I agree with you, come next season, Eric Comrie or whoever is backing up needs to be able to provide 20 to 22 starts, not 12 or 13. And even if 9 of the 13 are good, Connor Hellebuyck can't play 65 to 70 games for much longer, even though he is a workhorse. But right now, you're not harming him or his ability to play 60 or 65 games next year, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I'll just like the last point on there. I think, just because I'm saying what we all know about Connor Hellebuyck and what we've learned about him doesn't mean that he shouldn't have his workload monitored more carefully, right?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Especially as he gets older, right? I mean, this guy, when you are constantly year in and year out, one of the leaders in games played, minutes, shots against, all these things that we've seen Connor Hellebuyck be a part of over the last few seasons, that's eventually going to catch up to you. And when you rely on your goalie as much as the Winnipeg Jets do, it's going to eventually turn into a disaster. So there's comments around here too. There's absolutely. So, but again, the question was where, Eric Comrie tonight, the season is where it's at. We're at game 75 now. It's going to be Connor Hellebuyck the rest of it. They're going to continue to run their horse until that horse can't run any longer, or the horse has been disqualified, aka this team's been eliminated, and that's when you're going to see Eric come.
There you go. I wanted to just touch on 2 things quickly here. Freaky Fresh had said this earlier on. So why do the Jets lose to so many bottom feeders, Renny? This is factually incorrect. We've talked about this. It's 25 games now. It's 25 games. Over the last 25 games, the Jets have beat a team over the playoff line twice. They're not still in the playoff race, but they're not mathematically eliminated. The reason they're not mathematically eliminated is because they keep getting points against teams like the Montreal Canadiens, teams like the Ottawa Senators, teams like the Seattle Kraken. I know that there were times earlier in the year, it stands out that it was 1-0 that they lost to the Arizona Coyotes. So I know those games stick in the minds of Jets fans. But if you go back and look at the success they've had, it's against teams like Anaheim, it's against teams like Arizona, it's against teams like Montreal. So this idea that the Jets lose to bottom feeders, everyone loses to bottom feeders, but for the most part, the Jets have had great success against the bottom feeders. Kenny, you look like you want to say something?
Well, they've had some bad losses to bottom feeders, I think, is the point there. But I mean, their losses to Ottawa, to
They've had some bad losses to good teams.
Oh, absolutely.
The Dallas
Sean, you're right. You beat up on them.
New Jersey. Yeah,
That one trip where it was Calgary, Dallas, Colorado, like that was bad losses to good teams.
Oh yeah,
exactly. The Jets have not been. I mean, especially for over the last quarter of the season, the Jets have not been beating good teams, but they've been beating bad teams. The only reason we're talking about them having a mathematical possibility of making the playoffs is because this long stretch of playing bad teams, and they've been making hay against those teams. This is the last one. I wanted your guys' thoughts on this one. Actually, I got thinking about this the other day because this is the theory with a lot of Jets fans, and I know it's been a theory that's been floated out there about how bad Calgary was last year, and they to a degree stayed the course. They did make some tweaks but turned things around, and now they look like a juggernaut heading into this season. How many times have we seen this happen? Like, this has not happened that often. And you know what this argument reminds me of saying, just leave the Winnipeg Jets alone and get a new coach and everything's fine and we're winning the Stanley Cup this year. This argument reminds me of the argument we heard earlier in the season when we were saying since February or late January that the Jets were very likely on their way to missing the playoffs, and people kept holding up that example of the St. Louis Blues in 2019 being the last place team in the NHL at Christmas time or at New Year's, and then coming back, making the playoffs, and going to the Stanley Cup final and winning the Stanley Cup. This was like a team winning the lottery. This is a once-in-a-lifetime thing that happened. And people were looking at the Jets' playoff chances and trying to say, hey, no big deal. They'll just do what the St. Louis Blues did the other year in 2019. Well, guess who else has done what the St. Louis Blues did? Nobody. In 100+ years of hockey, no one has done that before. So basing arguments and belief in your team on the idea that they can just go do it because this other team did it, I think is a tough argument. I don't know how you guys feel about this, and maybe there's not enough time to have this conversation about the Calgary Flames. But what the Calgary Flames did here, yeah, there has to be an element of hidden talent that is sleeping, but there's also an element of finding the right coach to get that team to where they need to go, having players that are able to be molded to go in there, to go in that direction, having players that may have not ended up in a situation where, Ken has talked about it. Like, we don't know if Mark Scheifele is going to be here next season. And do we think that the Jets are suddenly this capable team of going on and winning the Stanley Cup if a Mark Scheifele is gone? Like, there's a lot to happen here before you proclaim this team the next Calgary Flames. It is a stretch to suggest it in the first place, but without knowing what's going to be happening in the next couple of months in the offseason, it is a borderline, in my opinion, ridiculous argument to make, because there's too many unknowns, and the fact that Calgary did it doesn't mean that someone does this every year or two teams do this every year. It almost never happens. So you're basing your hope and your belief on a once in every 5-year possibility. And just to me, it's I'm almost done with the argument entirely. I almost don't want to hear it anymore. Guys,
well, just a quick one before Jeff goes. Just a quick one here on that. I mean, the reason why they're drawing the parallel is because last year, a lot of people, including myself, I'm, happy to say it, even though I was completely wrong. I had the Flames winning the North Division, so I understand why this year a lot of our colleagues, including Jeff Merrick and Elliot Friedman, thought the Jets were potentially the best team in Canada. So much like last year, where Calgary kind of fell flat, that's happened to the Jets this year. Are there some parallels? Yes. Is it likely that, again, we have friends who work in the Calgary market. I listen to Calgary radio once in a while. Those fans were ready to drive Johnny Gaudreau to the airport last year. Not only did they want to get rid of him, they didn't want to see him get to his final year before free agency. They were ready to give him away if anyone was interested. Now Johnny Gaudreau is a Hart Trophy candidate. Can Mark Scheifele do that? Does he have the potential to do that? Well, that's up to Mark Scheifele to show. But I think that's why they're drawing the parallel, and because there was a coaching change naturally as well. But I mean, Calgary. Brad Treliving also brought in a couple of winners, guys who won. He brought in Blake Coleman initially, a guy who, and again, Blake hasn't had a great year, but he helps set the culture. And then at the deadline, or before the deadline, he goes out and get a preemptive strike for Tyler Toffoli, a guy who won with the LA Kings. So we talk about winners. I mean, Zach Sanford has won a Stanley Cup with the St. Louis Blues. He scored in Game 7. But you need guys that are a part of your leadership group that have won Stanley Cups if you want to help take the next step in terms of culture, I think. So the Jets have some guys that I think are emerging leaders. But I think that part of the reason Calgary's turned things around is because they brought in some guys who have won. And then the rest of the guys bought in. So to me, it's all about the buy-in.
Remind me who the captain of the Calgary Flames is.
They have good leadership.
They don't have one.
They have good leadership from their alternates.
They don't have a captain. And I'm
Right.
not saying that that's the answer, but I mean, imagine going in there and being like, yeah, no C here. I think it takes a buy-in from a team. And if we're not seeing a buy-in from the Winnipeg Jets on a season where they're loaded with talent, they've spent to the salary cap, it's deeper than this. I think the issues are deeper in Winnipeg than they are in Calgary. And, it's pieces, identifying what you need, bringing in guys, like a Coleman. And, and again, I don't know if there are a lot of parallels between the Winnipeg Jets and Calgary Flames, other than maybe these guys need a kick in the ass. You know what I mean? And other than that, I don't know.
Well, another quick thing about Calgary. I mean, Mark Giordano was the captain, and he is gone. And last year, Matthew Tkachuk, their emotional leader, had a tough go. I mean, they had that silly thing with LA where the puck got thrown and nobody stuck up for him, and he kind of stopped. Giordano, I believe, went to him and said, hey, man, you can't be getting into a scrum or getting into a fight every single shift. And then all of a sudden, Tkachuk was invisible for a couple of weeks. So now Tkachuk has been unbelievable, again, as an emotional leader. But Elias Lindholm is also one of the best two-way players in the NHL. So do the Jets have one of the best two-way players in the NHL? Well, if they do, we haven't seen that level of play yet. So that's also why they've turned things around. And the other part, too, Markstrom was hurt last year. Markstrom is playing at a Vezina-type level this year. But much like we're talking about Hellebuck, Sean, to your point, there have been times and stretches this year where Markstrom's played a little bit too much, and then his numbers have dipped a bit. But Dan Vladar, who they brought in, he's at 17 games played, right? Comrie's not quite at that level yet. So it's certainly going to be interesting to see. And I mean, I wouldn't dismiss it totally, but I'm with Jeff here. I don't think there are quite as many parallels as people hope that they're seeing. But could a turnaround happen with the proper personnel moves and a couple of tweaks and changes? They can be competitive, yes, but much like Jeff, like what you said with Hustler today, I mean, if the Jets want to move back to contender status, then they're going to have to make some significant changes in the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the perfect answer, right? All you need is to have a $6 million cap hit player on your fourth line scoring 20 points, and you're gonna be better, right? Yeah. Like we just saw, Lucic's $7 million or $6 million cap hit. He's on your fourth line.
I think the money doesn't exactly explain him as a player. You know what I mean? Like that.
Absolutely not. But
the issue with him, they're lucky to be getting what they get out of him. So,
totally.
Yeah. Okay, boys, I'm shutting it down. We went long. Wanted to make sure we respected Hammy for staying as long as he did. It was a joy to have you on the last couple shows here, Hammy. We really appreciate it.
Wish I could say the same.
You don't need to come back. I will park that theme song here from now on going forward.
Don't do me any favors. No, you know I love being on here and hanging out with you guys. But you guys don't have any friends.
Yeah, well, we'll make sure we have you on a couple more times because we got to have the cool kids on the show. Other than that, everyone really appreciate you. It was a fired up chat room here tonight for like a game that was like Jets against the second worst team in the league. Super fired up chat room. Absolutely love it. We'll get at her again on Wednesday we're going to be giving away some ice tickets. There's 2 more games, Thursday and Friday, correct, Ken?
Yeah, against the Connor Bedard and the Regina Pats.
Exactly. Absolutely huge games. We're going to be giving away some tickets for those games, so stick around for that. And other than that, it's going to be good to see everyone. Before we do go, last thing, let's get those comments off the board and show off our merch that we love if you'd go check out. Like you said, we've committed to taking half the profits that Ken and I pull down off these things and putting it towards the Winnipeg Humane Society. So if you like your Kenny and Renny gear, your water bottles, your cups, your shirts, go check it out at www.shopsportsnet.store. We're going to try and keep pushing forward with that merch so we can add more headbands and hats and stuff like that. Let's see if we can get over that line. Thanks so much, everybody. Go check out our YouTube page, click like and subscribe while you're there, and we'll see you on Wednesday.